Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and today I wanted to talk about the difference between a registered dietitian or a registered dietitian nutritionist, as they're changing the title to, and a nutritionist. Let's get into it. So what I'm going to be talking about today applies only to here in the US. I know over in like the UK, the term nutritionist and dietitian are pretty much interchangeable. Anyone calling themselves that is held to the same level of education and accountability. But I know here, specifically in the US, the two are not equivalent to each other. And so I want to talk about what are the differences and why it matters. I have no idea about like Canada, Australia, anywhere else, like what the differences are, if there is, or if it's like in the UK where you can actually use the two interchangeably. So just for this conversation today, it applies only to here in the United States because that's where I'm from. That's the only place that I can speak to because again, that's where I'm from. So a little bit about me first. As my channel name and my handle on Instagram implies, nerdy RD to be, I am in the process of becoming an RD, or a registered dietitian. They are changing the title to registered dietitian nutritionist, RDN, instead of RD, but when I made the accounts and everything, I put RD because that's what it's been for years and that's what I had always known it as. But when I eventually take that credentialing examination, my title will actually be RDN instead of RD. Not really too important because it's still very different from just calling yourself a nutritionist. So let's talk about what the process of becoming a dietitian looks like in the US and what I've gotten through so far. So here in the US, we have Eat Right Pro, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, right? That is the largest organization of dietitians in the world. I think actually it is probably number one in the world. I'll have to check that. But it's definitely the biggest here in the United States, and that is also the same body that does all of the accrediting and all the testing and all of that for dietitians. So they accredit programs that teach people who want to be dietitians, and then they also are responsible for the CDR exam. I think that's the Commission on Dietetic Certification. I don't remember what the CDR exam actually stands for, because in my brain that's just the examination that I will have to pass to be able to get my credentials as an RDN or an RD. Currently, you only have to have a bachelor's degree in an approved program, and then after that, you will do your internship hours, which I believe there's a minimum of 1,200 hours for an internship. And again, that internship and that school program both have to be approved by the Ascend Council. It's the like council on accreditation for those programs, so that they make sure that the education you're getting before in a 4-year degree, a bachelor's degree, in a DPD program, a didactic program on dietetics, is approved and appropriate and will prepare you for your internship. And the internship, again, has to be approved by that same council to make sure that all of the rotations that you'll be doing, everything you will be learning there, so to actually prepare you to treat patients or work with clients in many different settings, right? So clinical, food service, hospice, sports, school nutrition, there are several different branches that a dietitian can work in. Okay, so most of the time that's how the programs are going to look, right? They're going to be didactic, 2-part. You'd get your 4-year bachelor's degree and then you would do an internship. There are a couple programs left in the US where they are actually coordinated programs where you would do your internship hours at the same time that you're doing your bachelor's degree. However, 90% of the ones that I have seen, they break it up into 2. Come 2024, to be able to sit for that CDR exam to become a RDN, you actually have to have a master's degree to be able to sit for that. So the education level for dietitians is actually being increased in 4 years. It's 2020 as of filming this. So in the future, not too far in the future, just 4 years, your new incoming dietitians will have at least a master's degree and their internship that they've done as well. So what kind of classes have I done? Because I am about to graduate. I am 4 weeks away from graduating with my bachelor's degree. I am so excited. Not that I'm getting a break after that. So let's talk about some of the classes that I have done and what I have learned going through my DPD program so far. So of course we have a lot of the same prereqs and gen eds that everyone else does, Psych 101, Lit, I went up through Calc 1 in math. You don't have to for most nutrition programs. Oh, there's another weird thing that happened with my degree. The departments actually like split last year. So it used to be health sciences, nutrition option that I was getting my degree in, and then they split the departments because we're getting a new building, so they're expanding some of their programs. So now it's actually human physiology and nutrition, or HPNU. It's the code for all the classes that I'm in. Anyways, so we had some of those same gen eds, right? Like math, English, psych, macroeconomics, things like that everyone else takes. And then some of the more specific prereqs for my nutrition sequence, which we'll talk about in a minute, were things like anatomy and physiology, accounting, microbiology with a lab, biology, which is, again, is kind of a gen ed as well. Pathophysiology was another prereq, biochemistry, and because biochemistry, organic chemistry, and gen chem were all leading up to the nutrition sequence that my school offers. So the nutrition sequence starts once a year. It starts in the spring, and it is a 3-semester long cohort setup, right? So once you are in that degree path and you go into those classes, you'll stay with the same, in my case, 14 other people who go into it with you. We have all the same co-requisites, so we're taking all the same classes at the same time, and then it's 3 semesters long. And then after that, that is that part of the education that has to be reviewed and approved by the Ascend Council to make sure that we are getting the proper education and training to go into an internship and to be prepared for it. So classes that I've taken in the nutrition sequence, include food systems management 1 and 2. That was a 2-parter. So that's things like planning out and knowing what kind of equipment you would need for a large-scale production kitchen. So for any dietitian who's going to be working in a hospital or in a school or any place where they produce food on a large scale, you'll need some level of food systems management. So we have that education. We also had food science, oh no, I always this one. Nutrition, science, and food prep. I always want to say food science, and then I hit the nutrition prep and I'm like, nope, that's wrong, you flipped it again. Nutrition, science, and food prep class, where we actually went through, and the prep part was really fun because that class actually had a lab attached to it. So we would prepare food in different ways, right? So like playing with different flours, some that are like gluten-free and some that aren't, and seeing how taking that protein out, because gluten's just protein, affects like the quality of your food product, and then cooking with different acidities for vegetables, right? We would make some vegetables in just like plain water, then we'd do some with like cream tartar sauce and some with baking soda. And then we also learned in class some of the other ways that they assess food, right? So how the quality of a food product is assessed, right? Even just like the moisture and like density of like a piece of bread, they have scales for testing that, which is kind of cool. Then other things like preserving vitamin content in food and talking about the way different cooking methods will affect the nutritional content of your food. We talked about that in that class. It was really fun, mostly because there was a lab part and we made cupcakes. And then, of course, one of the like big beasts of classes that I had was nutrition assessment, which led into medical nutrition therapy 1 and medical nutrition therapy 2. So those go through the whole like 3 semesters, right? Assessment, MNT 1, MNT 2. Hoo boy! Those are some of like the hardest classes I've taken aside from biochemistry in my college career. And so the medical nutrition therapy is about how you would actually go about treating from a nutrition perspective different conditions. So in the first semester we did the big 3, right? We did cardiovascular, diabetes, and obesity. So we talked about all 3 of those different conditions and what different dietary approaches look like to helping improve those conditions and preventing those conditions in some cases, and what would be appropriate nutrition prescriptions for people who had those issues. So things like carb counting for diabetics, and we of course went through and looked at a ton of different drugs that might be prescribed to someone who is a type 1 or type 2 diabetic, because of course drugs come with side effects, and sometimes the side effects will affect your nutrition. Sometimes drugs will make your needs increase or decrease for certain things. Sometimes that's calories, right? A lot of psychotropic drugs for mental conditions will affect people's weight. And then some other ones will affect people's vitamin status, right? So some different drugs can make you need more B12 or more vitamin A. And these are things that you're going to need to know if you are in the charge of someone's nutritional status. So we talk about the pharmacy side as it pertains to us, right? We don't get too far into it beyond what are the nutritional impacts of these drugs, because we're not there to be pharmacists, so we don't really need to go into anything more than that, right? We need to kind of stay in our lane and let the pharmacists be in their lane. They stay out of our food, we stay out of their drugs, right? So we got to work together still to make sure that we are appropriately treating our patients and that we know what some of these side effects and interactions between food and drugs and other drugs are going to be. So we talked about that. And then in MMT2 right now, we're going through, oh my gosh, renal. Renal was so much, dude. Kidneys are kind of complicated anyway, so when they start going wrong, and then there are like 5 stages of chronic kidney disease and failure, and there's different recommendations for all these different levels. And so kidney, oh my gosh, kidneys, that section was a lot. But of course, that's so important, right? Of how do you treat a patient that is having progressive renal failure? That is incredibly important, because if you don't appropriately treat them, you can make that disease progress faster, and that is not what you want to do. And then of course we have advanced nutrition 1 and 2. In advanced nutrition we covered macros, so fat, protein, carbs. And then in advanced nutrition 2 we are covering micros. So we started with water-soluble vitamins, we just did fat-soluble vitamins, and then we're going to be doing minerals and trace minerals coming up. So I am not quite done yet, but I am seeing the light at the tunnel, and I am so close, and again I am so excited about it. So those are some of the harder, more science-heavy classes, because when we're talking about nutrient metabolism in advanced nutrition 1 and 2, we get into the nitty-gritty, right? Like with the macros, we got back into the biochem of how your body processes carbs. So yes, we were going back through and rememorizing things like glycolysis, like all the different enzymes that are involved in breaking down glucose, all the way from glucose to ATP production. So all the way through glycolysis, through citric acid cycle, TCA cycle, and then of course we did the same thing for protein and fat. We needed to know the in-depth nitty-gritty enzymes and different reactions that happen to get that from a molecule of sugar, a 6-carbon unit of sugar, to usable energy, to ATP, right? So it's not just like, oh, your body uses carbs for energy. It's much more in depth. And we need to know that, because one of the things that is coming up in medical nutrition therapy is things like inborn errors of metabolism. So if someone has a glycogen storage disorder, you need to know, like, okay, where in that pathway, what's going wrong? Okay, so where in that pathway it's wrong will change how you can treat that patient, depending on what isn't functioning in that pathway. So it can get pretty in-depth with science, which is fine. I love science. I'm not a math person, but I love me some science, so I am so happy that I changed my major. I was actually a biochemistry major my first 2 years of college, and then I switched to nutrition because I had been planning on being a pharmacist since I was in like middle school. And then I actually started learning more about pharmacy industry, and then just more about how your nutrition impacts your quality of life and your longevity, and how it really makes such a big impact in your life. And I was like, you know what, I want to go play in the kitchen and play with food and hopefully be more on the preventative side for people, and maybe even help some people get off medications, because sometimes that is possible for people. Not always, unfortunately, not even the majority of the time, but sometimes it is possible, and that's a pretty good feeling if you can help someone change their life and take back some control and improve their quality of life. Anyways, that is not the point of this video. And other things that we learned were like community nutrition, so designing and delivering curriculum for a community. In my case, we had a whole semester-long project where we actually did that. We assessed a community's needs, and then we developed and delivered an appropriate lesson for them. In my case, it was seniors, low-income seniors, and they loved it. Oh my God, that's honestly, like, I think that is my proudest moment in the 5 years I've been in college. After I switched majors, I tacked on another year because, whoops. I didn't have all the prereqs I needed to start the nutrition sequence, so I tacked on an extra year doing some gen eds, like physiology. Anyways, again, not the point. Anyways, I think that is absolutely my proudest moment, was when we delivered that curriculum that we had worked so hard on. It was a group project, so I had some really great group mates, and the people who came for it, they had questions, they were interested, and they were asking like, oh, are there going to be more of these lessons? And they really enjoyed it. So super fulfilling, really satisfying moment, just knowing that you had delivered some really helpful information to some people who needed it. So anyways, great feeling. Hearts. Anyways, so that is some of what I have gone through, and I'm not done yet. I can't take the CDR exam fresh out of a bachelor's degree. Unless you are doing one of those coordinated programs that I talked about, you're still not ready once you have a bachelor's degree to take that exam. You still can't take it. They will not let you. What you have to do next is an internship. So this is the really awesome, actually more hands-on learning part of your education if you're planning on becoming a dietitian, is that you are going to actually have rotations in clinical, in community nutrition, and you are going to be having preceptors, and you're going to be following and working with them and learning how to do your job as a dietitian, as a future dietitian. And you still have homework in an internship. Boo. So you're not absolved of that either. You still have some other projects that you have to do, again, just to teach you how to do the job as an entry-level dietitian. So you still have to do another, I think it's 1,200 hours minimum in your internship and meet all of these different areas that you have to be educated in as an entry-level dietitian to be able to sit and take that exam and then pass that exam to be able to be a registered dietitian. Okay, that is the process for becoming an RD. And for me personally, and why this video was on my mind, is because I just got accepted into my internship. I am so freaking excited for it. And mine happens, excuse me. So excited for it, but mine happens to be a master's program while I'm doing the internship. So I am really excited to be able to get my master's really quick, because again, come 2024, all the entry-level dietitians that are coming in are gonna have a master's degree, and I don't wanna be the one who doesn't. So I'm also just super pumped about their program. It's in diagnostics, which is, I'm really excited for it. So that is what I'm going to be rolling into next. Again, even though I'm graduating, I am not going to be getting a break from homework. I'm going to be rolling right back into more school and more learning with my internship, which I am very excited about. And then again, after, for me, 2 years, doing a full-time internship for a dietitian is usually 10 months, give or take. And those are full-time ones. There are also part-time ones that you can do over 2 years. And because I'll be in school while I'm doing mine, it's going to be drawn out over 22 months. So again, that is a long process with a lot of education. A lot of education to be able to become a registered dietitian. And there's a reason why not anyone can just run around and call themselves a registered dietitian. It's like someone running around and claiming that they're an MD, a doctor, when they're not. And it's important and it matters. These titles matter because that title will tell you what level of training and education someone has. So you wouldn't go to someone who's kind of a doctor, you know what I mean? If we had another title for doctor, like nutritionist and dietitian, or people think they're interchangeable, but they're not. We don't really have something like that for doctors. But if there was, you would want to choose someone with 7 years of education in that field who's actually been trained on how to treat patients versus someone who, in this case, a nutritionist, that doesn't actually tell you anything. That tells you nothing about what kind of education they have. They could have taken a 2-week online course. They could have taken a 12-week intensive from NASM. You have no idea. You have no idea what they have and have not been taught. It tells you nothing about the level or quality of education that a nutritionist has, which is really frustrating. Again, this other reason this video was on my mind, because of everything going on right now with the pandemic and the coronavirus and all of that. There are a lot of nutritionists who are trying to sell immunity boosting plans, and it just really frustrates me because some of them, again, really truly do not have the education to be speaking on this topic, and they're just ginger is such a good medicinal root. You won't be able to catch viruses if you just drink this ginger tea and eat this, meal plan that I'm selling on my page. It's an ebook for $200, and it is really, really, really frustrating to me, because again, it's people who don't have the authority who are using that title of nutritionist because people think that dietitian and nutritionist are interchangeable here when they're not. So they're using this false authority because they can use the term nutritionist to describe themselves without having any legal ramifications to scam people, essentially. So that is very frustrating to me. And again, not all nutritionists are bad. Like I mentioned just now, you could have some level of actual decent certification, through NASM, when they have some basic nutrition courses, and after you finish that, you can call yourself a certified nutritionist through that program. And it's definitely not on the same level as a dietitian, but where someone who's getting theirs through NASM, they're probably also a personal trainer, because that's a lot of what NASM does as well, certifies personal trainers. So for the majority of the time, someone who's a personal trainer or somewhere close to that field is probably not going to be working with someone who's in an ICU or has kidney failure or who needs a tube feeding or TPN feeding or anything like that. So what they've been educated on, which would mostly be like macros and protein quality and things like that, is probably going to be appropriate. However, you should always ask, if you're going to a nutritionist and you are thinking that you want to spend money for this person to give you advice, ask where their education is from, right? Like ask like, okay, like what credentialing agency have you gone through to earn the term or the title nutritionist? Because there is not really a standard for it. Whereas with RDN, with a registered dietitian, there is. And here's the other thing, that doesn't always stop dietitians from being stupid. There are definitely some dietitians that I've seen on Instagram and things like that who are putting things out that would not fly with those Ascend accrediting bodies, right? So there's one, I made a video on one a couple, months ago now. It's one of the earlier videos on this channel. And it was called No Food Rules because that was the title of the Instagram of this dietitian. And I really encourage you to go watch that video because it's a whole other situation. It has its own video for me to explain the whole thing, but they were putting things out that would not be okay for them to be saying to someone who came in with like, who was obese and had type 2 diabetes, and they came in and were like, hey, like, I have these medical issues, but I just want to eat like 3 slices of pizza and the same thing that like my partner eats, and I just want to eat all the sugary donuts and good food, and that's all I want to do. And if you went by her Instagram, it would be like, yeah, like there are no bad foods, like that's fine, eat what you want, it doesn't matter. When in reality, it does. When you have type 2 diabetes, you should count your carbs, and if you want to, and you have the goal of losing weight and hopefully bringing your A1C down and having better long-term blood control, then those wouldn't be ideal choices. Doesn't mean that they're bad foods, right? Like food is not an entity with thought, right? It's not bad or good. It's not out to get you. It's just better and not as desirable choices that you have as far as food goes. So in that video, I talk about, okay, if this person, if they were a practicing dietitian in a clinical setting and they had, you know, a type 2 diabetic come to them, they would not, I really hope, would not be telling them the same things that they post on their Instagram. So again, being a registered dietitian does not make you infallible. So even if you're looking for a registered dietitian, you can find one on, find a professional on eatright.org. You can find ones that are in your area. If you do have some kind of nutritional need and want to talk to a professional, you can find one through there. And again, you'll be finding registered dietitians through that site, Eat Right Pro or eatright.org and Eat Right Pro are through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So the people you will find on that tool finder will be registered dietitians or diet techs. So again, like even if they are an RD, it doesn't make us perfect, but it does tell you some of the level and quality of education that they have to have had to have earned that title. So I hope this video makes sense. If you have any more questions, go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. Leave a like on this video if you liked it and if you learned something new, if maybe you didn't know that dietitian and nutritionist do not mean the same thing. And follow me on Instagram if you want to see more of my face. Don't know why you would want that, but I do have an Instagram that you can go follow. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.